そこまで時間もかからないだろう。さっさと片付けてやる。
Solo Leveling Season 2 has officially come to an end. If that cliffhanger ending left you craving more, you're in for a wild ride. Buckle up, because today we're diving straight into the next chapter of Hunter Sung Jin Woo's unstoppable rise. After clearing the first wave of magical beasts in the Red Gate, Jin Wu pressed forward, his summoned soldiers advancing toward the next target. Then the dungeon boss emerged, flanked by his elite guard. He scanned the battlefield, searching for the one responsible for the massacre of his forces. His gaze locked onto Jin Wu, an overwhelming presence that sent a ripple of unease through him. But before the boss could even issue a command, a chilling realization set in. The battlefield was silent. His entire army, all of them, had already been wiped out. Jin Wu found the situation amusing. He commanded his shadow soldiers to reveal themselves, then with a cold gaze ordered them to eliminate the enemies standing before him. Jin Wu, along with his shadow army, marched forward, exuding an overwhelming aura impossible to ignore. Sensing the imminent threat, the magic beasts charged with ferocity, but they were no match. The battlefield descended into chaos as Jin Wu's forces brutally tore through their enemies, dismantling them piece by piece. The boss, now paralyzed with fear, could do nothing but watch as his forces were annihilated. His agonized screams echoed through the dungeon as he called out for his fallen subordinates, but none remained. In a final desperate attempt, the boss lunged forward, but Baru, moving at lightning speed, struck first. His claws pierced through the boss's body. Igris followed up, severing an arm in one swift motion. Tusk delivered the finishing blow, slamming the boss into the ground with overwhelming force. The entire battlefield trembled from the impact. As the dust settled, Jin Wu stepped forward. The boss lay in a pool of his own blood, barely clinging to life. Jin Wu demanded answers, but the creature remained silent. The system was likely interfering again, preventing it from revealing any crucial information. With a sigh, Jin Wu dismissed the thought for now. He had something else to focus on. He opened his inventory and, with a focused expression, took out a key, the cursed random box key, a rare item he had obtained after defeating Baran in the Demon Castle. At the time, the key had offered no information, leaving Jin Wu puzzled about its purpose. But now, after reaching level 100 following his achievements in the Jeju Island raid, the required conditions had been met. The system had finally revealed the details behind the mysterious key. It was the key to the Carton Temple's gate. A message popped up stating that the location of the designated gate would be revealed once the allotted time had passed. The name struck a chord in Jin Wu's mind. Carton Temple. A rush of memories flooded in. The double dungeon, the ancient temple at its end, the eerie stone statues, and the stone slate held by one of them. The pieces were finally falling into place. Jin Wu realized that the system was calling him back to where it all began. The very place that had set him on the path of a reawakened hunter was summoning him once more. But this time, it felt different. If everything had been orchestrated from the start, if the system had been waiting for his return, then Jin Wu knew he had to answer the call. The challenge had been issued once again, and this time he was ready. With steely resolve, Jin Wu declared in his mind for the statue of God to wait for him, because he was coming. As Jin Wu stepped out of the Red Gate after clearing it, daylight had already broken. He began walking toward his car, ready to head to his guild office, when a man suddenly approached him, introducing himself as Adam White, a senior official from the Federal Bureau of Hunters. The man's presence hinted at something important. Curious, Jin Wu asked why he had come all the way from the United States to meet him. Adam responded with something that immediately piqued his interest. He had information that no other country or institution could provide. Adam explained that the Bureau made it their mission to share knowledge with special individuals like Jin Wu, and after his performance on Jeju Island, their interest in him had skyrocketed. But Jin Wu, skeptical, was ready to walk away, until Adam said one word: upgrader. That stopped him in his tracks. Adam offered to explain further, and the two drove off to meet the Bureau's deputy director. Upon arriving, Jin Wu was greeted by Michael Connor, the deputy director himself, who wasted no time getting to the point. He extended an offer, an invitation invitation to join the American hunters. Jin Wu, uninterested in their proposal, cut straight to the real reason he was there, the upgrader. Soon, a middle-aged woman named Norma Selner entered the room. Connor introduced her as the upgrader, the only person in the world capable of enhancing an awakened being's abilities. Mrs. Selner explained her powers, though Jin Wu remained skeptical. When he questioned the effectiveness of her ability, she claimed that an individual could experience a 20 to 30% increase in strength after completing all 3 stages. Connor emphasized that the Bureau was willing to grant Jin Wu this incredible gift, hoping he would accept. To prove her abilities, Ms. Selner offered to perform the first stage right there. She gently took Jin Wu's wrist, instructing him to look into her eyes. Connor, watching closely, was certain that once Jin Wu experienced the upgrade firsthand, he would be eager to continue and sign the agreement. But what happened next left everyone in shock. As Ms. Selner gazed into Jin Wu's eyes, she suddenly found herself consumed by an overwhelming darkness. She searched frantically, but saw nothing, until a shadow emerged. It moved closer, revealing its terrifying presence as it opened its eyes and stared directly at her. Overwhelmed by fear, she screamed and fell off her chair, completely shaken by what she had seen. The 2 agents guarding Ms. Selner instantly drew their guns, aiming at Jin Wu in a panic. Connor, alarmed by their reaction, quickly intervened, shouting for them to lower their weapons. He reminded them of who Jin Wu was, warning that if they had acted this way towards someone like Thomas Andre or Liu Zhigang, they wouldn't have lived to regret it. Realizing their mistake, the agents swiftly holstered their guns and rushed to assist the trembling Ms. Selner. Connor turned back and bowed deeply to Jin Wu, apologizing profusely for his agent's actions. Still processing what had just happened, Jin Wu reassured him that it was okay. Connor rushed to Ms. Selner's side, trying to understand what had happened. She could barely speak, her breathing unsteady. Seeing her distress, he quickly decided it would be best to reschedule their meeting with Jin Wu. Without hesitation, Adam escorted Jin Wu out of the room. Still struggling to catch her breath, Ms. Selner finally managed to speak to Connor. Jin Wu was no ordinary hunter. He was a king, a powerful king beyond anything she had ever encountered. Connor, trying to grasp the magnitude of her words, asked if this meant Jin Wu was as strong as a national-level hunter. But Ms. Selner admitted that this wasn't something she could measure. What she had experienced went far beyond rankings or classifications. Still trembling, she described the sensation that had shaken her to her core. When she looked at Jin Wu, it wasn't just him she saw, but a presence within him, a force so deep and overwhelming that it had looked into her as she tried to peer into him. As fear gripped her, she shared one last chilling realization with Connor. There was no limit to Jin Wu's power. As Jin Wu left the room, the atmosphere remained tense. The Bureau had sought to recruit him, believing they could offer him something valuable. Instead, they had just uncovered something far beyond their understanding. The story then shifted to an earlier event in the timeline. The scene cut to America, where a hunter was trapped in a high-level dungeon. Fear gripped his face as a chilling presence emerged before him, Sion, the Frost Monarch, who was on the hunt for the rulers within the country. A moment later, a gate opened behind him, revealing Yogan, the Transfiguration Monarch. He hurried towards Sion, bringing urgent news about a small island to the east. Sion frowned, questioning why Yogan was bringing up a place he had already claimed, as the island in the east was home to the Shadow Monarch. Yogan explained that the rulers were attempting to free Leah south of that location, and he needed to head there immediately. He urged the Frost Monarch to take his place in the east, but Sion pressed again. What about the Shadow Monarch? Yogan reassured him that as long as the architect fulfilled the contract, everything would go according to plan. However, he also shared an intriguing detail that made Sion grin with excitement. The greatest fragment of light had been located in the east. Just then, the Frost Monarch sensed a powerful presence. A ruler had arrived. It was Echelin, Jin Wu's father. He had deliberately left traces of his power, luring the monarchs to America. His glare was filled with fury as he demanded to know if they were referring to Korea as the small island to the east. As they prepared to leave, the Frost Monarch confirmed it, taunting Ilwan to chase them if he dared. Not one to back down, Ilwan launched a swift attack, but Sion countered effortlessly, erecting a massive ice wall that exploded upon impact, shaking the entire area. Back in the present, Yu Jin-ho sat in the office, fully committed to his new mission, silencing anyone who dared to badmouth Jin Wu.
人間の多くやっぱ 虫は虫だな。
After the Jeju Island raid and the controversy surrounding Jin Wu's involvement, he was determined to protect both his partner and their guild's reputation. Wasting no time, he meticulously went through each offending comment, reporting them one by one with unwavering focus. Just then, Jin Wu appeared silently beside him. The sudden presence startled Jin Ho, snapping him out of his concentration. Jin Wu casually asked if there was any trouble, but Jin Ho assured him everything was fine. That's when he noticed something unusual. Jin Wu was still in his hunter gear. Jin Wu explained that he had just returned from a gate, bringing back high-level magic cores to fund their guild. Hearing this, Jin Ho was both relieved and impressed. With such valuable resources, they wouldn't have to worry about salaries for future employees. Jin Wu, however, looked confused when Jin Ho mentioned employees. Jin Ho reminded him that they still needed one more member to officially establish the guild. But before they could dwell on it, another pressing issue came up: the guild's name. Jin Wu initially dismissed it as unimportant, but Jin Ho emphasized that a name would define their identity. As they debated potential names, a knock at the door interrupted their discussion. Jin Ho hesitated, curious about who could be visiting. As he cracked the door open, he froze in shock. Standing before him was Hunter Cha Hae-In. Jin Wu was just as surprised. Someone of her stature showing up at his office was completely unexpected. He asked what brought her there, and Hae-In, without hesitation, stated her reason. She wanted to join his guild. Jin Wu, puzzled by her request, sought clarification. It had only been 2 years since her awakening, which meant she was still under contract with the Hunters Guild. He assumed she wouldn't be able to leave so easily, but to his surprise, Hae-In was willing to pay the penalty to break her contract. What shocked him even more was that she expected nothing in return, not even a signing bonus or a salary. Jin Wu couldn't understand why she would abandon one of Korea's most powerful guilds for his newly formed, unproven one. Pressing further, he asked why she was making such a drastic decision. Hae-In hesitated. She lowered her gaze, struggling to put her feelings into words. She couldn't quite explain it, but something was drawing her to Jin Wu's side. But what secret was she hiding? What did she know about the Shadow Monarch that others didn't? And just when the truth seemed within reach, after composing herself, Hae-In finally replied. After what happened in Jeju Island, after Jin Wu saved her from the jaws of death, she wanted to be near him, but she couldn't admit that. Instead, she offered a simpler excuse. She wanted a less complicated life. Jin Wu listened, understanding more than he let on. As an S-rank hunter himself, he knew the burden that came with such power. But Jin Wu wasn't about to let her join so easily. To test her resolve, he announced there would be a guild entrance test. Hae-In looked caught off guard. There had been no mention of a test in the recruitment notice. Jin Wu smoothly deflected, implying it must have been an oversight on Jin Ho's part. For the test, Jin Wu declared she would have to face one of his summons, his strongest one yet. Despite the unexpected challenge, Hae-In didn't even flinch. There was no fear, no hesitation in her eyes. She was ready. Jin Wu suggested heading to the Hunter Association's gymnasium to conduct the test. As they prepared to leave, Jin Wu realized the gymnasium was quite far from their office. He wanted to test if his shadow exchange skill could transport both of them together. He reassured Hae-In that there was no need for a long walk. They could take a shortcut, but she needed to stay close. As Jin Wu stepped toward her, Hae-In felt a lump in her throat. He was closer than she expected. Before she could process it, Jin Wu activated shadow exchange. In an instant, their forms sank into the shadows, vanishing from the room without a sound. As they arrived at the gymnasium, the lights flickered on automatically, reacting to their mana. The vast space was brightly illuminated, and Hae-In couldn't hide her amazement at what she had just experienced. She took a moment to take in her surroundings before her gaze finally settled on Jin Wu, who was already prepared to begin the test. Just as they were about to start, Hae-In realized she had left her weapon behind. Jin Wu pointed out that the gymnasium had reserve weapons, though they were mostly for training and not of the highest quality. Without hesitation, she examined the selection and chose a sword similar in weight and length to her usual one. Once she confirmed her choice, Jin Wu summoned Igris, the best swordsman among his shadow soldiers. While Baru was undoubtedly his strongest summon, Jin Wu knew unleashing him against Hae-In might be too much. potentially even traumatizing, so he settled on Igris for this test. Jin Wu explained the conditions. Victory would be achieved by destroying the summon, while defeat would occur if Hae-In surrendered. To make the fight fair, he retrieved the Demon Monarch's sword from his inventory and handed it to Igris. Without wasting any time, Jin Wu gave the signal, and the match began. Igris struck first, swinging the Demon Monarch's sword with deadly precision. A bolt of lightning shot toward Hae-In, crackling with immense power. She reacted instantly, dodging with cat-like agility as the blast struck the wall behind her, leaving a deep charred mark. Jin Wu watched closely, impressed. A lesser hunter would have been fatally wounded if they had been even slightly grazed by that attack. Without losing momentum, Hae-In gripped her sword and charged forward. Her focus was unwavering, and Igris met her head-on. Their blades clashed, sending sparks flying, each strike resonating through the gymnasium. Jin Wu had expected a good fight, but as he observed the battle, he realized he had underestimated Hae-In. Despite wielding the Demon Monarch's sword, Igris was struggling. Hae-In's attacks were relentless, her technique refined and precise. With one final blow, she sent Igris crashing into the wall. The impact reverberated through the space, and Jin Wu knew the outcome was decided. Before Igris could rise again, Jin Wu called off the match, but Hae-In wasn't satisfied. She stepped forward, her breathing steady, and questioned whether Igris was truly the strongest summon Jin Wu had. Her gaze was unwavering as she insisted on facing his strongest one now. Jin Wu hesitated, knowing exactly who she meant. He was concerned she might get hurt, but Hae-In's determination was absolute. She wasn't backing down. She wanted this fight. After a brief pause, Jin Wu finally agreed and, without saying another word, summoned Baru. The moment the shadow ant materialized, the atmosphere in the gymnasium shifted, but despite the crushing weight of his aura, Hae-In stood firm. Baru, ever loyal to Jin Wu, awaited confirmation of his orders. Jin Wu commanded him to defeat Hae-In but made one thing clear: she must not be harmed. With his mission set, Baru unleashed a thunderous battle cry that shook the gymnasium. His blade-like claws extended menacingly from his fingers, ready to strike. Just as the tension peaked, Jin Wu's stern voice cut through the silence, reminding Baru of his command. Hearing his liege's instruction, Baru immediately retracted his claws. In that instant, Hae-In saw an opening and moved to seize the moment. But before she could react, Baru vanished from her sight. An icy shiver ran down her spine. She had seen this move before on Jeju Island. She steeled herself, refusing to fall for the same trick twice. Baru reappeared behind her, his presence looming over her. But this time, she was ready. Her blade lashed out in a flurry of precise strikes, dozens of slashes cutting through the air, yet not a single one landed. Baru dodged effortlessly, his form unmoving, his gaze impassive. The overwhelming difference in their power became painfully clear. No matter how fast or how precise her attacks were, they simply couldn't reach him. Confusion and frustration began to set in for Hae-In. She couldn't understand. How could he be so powerful? And more importantly, what kind of strength did Jin Wu possess to command a monster like this with such ease? As doubt settled in, Baru suddenly closed the distance between them. A suffocating stench of death washed over her, paralyzing her limbs. For a fleeting moment, she felt as if it was over. But instead of attacking, Baru released a terrifying roar, the force of his magic power sending Hae-In skidding backward. Momentarily stunned, Jin Wu watched the one-sided fight unfold with a grimace. He found no pleasure in the spectacle and asked if Hae-In was satisfied, hoping she would yield. But despite everything, her resolve hadn't wavered. She still wanted to fight. Jin Wu observed closely, trying to understand her intentions. By now, she knew she couldn't win. She had seen the sheer gap in their strength, yet she still refused to back down. He could sense Baru's growing irritation. Unlike his other summons, Baru was still a predator at heart. Even now, Jin Wu could feel him suppressing his overwhelming instinct to kill. Suddenly, Baru's patience snapped, his instincts flared, and he could no longer tolerate prey standing up to its predator. With a flick of his wrist, his claws extended once more as he lunged at Hae-In with lethal intent, but she dodged, barely. Realizing she had to take a risk, Hae-In activated her most powerful technique, sword dance. Moving with increasing speed, her blade carved elegant arcs in the air, each strike flowing seamlessly into the next. The sound of metal clashing filled the room as Baru blocked every attack with his claws. Despite his calm demeanor, Baru's displeasure was evident. Growing tired of the game, he decided to end it. As Hae-In lunged for another strike, he caught her sword with his bare hand. With a sickening crunch, he shattered it. Half the blade fell to the floor, but Hae-In didn't hesitate. She channeled all her remaining magic power into the broken weapon, its jagged edge glowing with an intense light. She was about to unleash a skill she had never used before, Blade of Light. Seeing her chance, Hae-In thrust her glowing weapon toward Baru, who had briefly lowered his guard after breaking her sword. Watching from the sidelines, Jin Wu's eyes widened. Something was wrong. In that brief moment, Baru's mind reset. Jin Wu's command to avoid harming Hae-In was overwritten, and an old, deeply ingrained instinct from his previous life resurfaced: annihilate all enemies. To Baru, Hae-In was no longer an opponent, she was prey. Claws outstretched, Baru launched himself at Hae-In with terrifying speed, intent on ending her. She froze, her instinct screaming at her, but it was too late to react. Just as his claws were about to reach her, Jin Wu intervened. In a blur, he caught Baru's attack with his bare hands. Baru trembled as his gaze met Jin Wu's, realizing his mistake. He leaped back, dropping to the ground, begging for forgiveness. Jin Wu sighed, understanding what had happened. Baru's protective instincts had momentarily overridden his command. For a moment, Jin Wu glared at the kneeling shadow before shifting his gaze toward Hae-In. She had fallen to one knee, her breathing ragged. He still didn't understand. Why was she pushing herself so hard? Someone of her caliber didn't need to risk her life over a guild entrance exam. It wasn't worth it. Jin Wu asked her why she was pushing herself so hard, hoping for an answer that would make sense. But Hae-In remained silent, avoiding his gaze. Her silence only deepened his confusion. Still confused, Jin Wu asked Hae-In if she was interested in him. Hae-In's head snapped up, her expression betraying her shock. She looked completely caught off guard, as if the question had pulled her out of a daze. Jin Wu, sensing her surprise, dismissed the thought with a shrug. But after a long pause, Hae-In quietly admitted the truth. Jin Wu was right. She did have feelings for him. The scene shifted to the Federal Bureau of Hunters in the United States. Director David Brennan wasn't pleased with the recent news. His men had failed to recruit Sung Jin Wu, a hunter the Bureau had been determined to bring into their ranks ever since witnessing his overwhelming strength during the Jeju Island raid. Assistant Director Connor, accompanied by Norma Selner standing beside him, apologized for their failure in completing the assignment. Brennan, eager to get to the bottom of the situation, wasted no time in demanding an explanation. He wasn't interested in apologies. He needed to know what had gone wrong. Connor detailed everything that had happened in Korea, describing their failed efforts to bring Jin Wu under the Bureau's authority. He explained to the director that, based on Miss Selner's observations, Jin Wu was supposed to be one of the Monarchs. This revelation about Jin Wu took Brennan by surprise. If true, it meant Jin Wu's power was beyond what they had anticipated. Brennan immediately sought clarification, questioning whether this put him on the level of a national-level hunter. Miss Selner took a deep breath before explaining. All reawakened hunters drew their strength from a realm known as the Other Side. Their abilities were not their own, but channeled from this unseen force. She had always been able to perceive these connections, feeling the energy each hunter borrowed. Some hunters glowed brighter than the rest, appearing to her as streaks of blinding light. She had always referred to them as monarchs. But Jin Wu's case was different. A chill ran through her as she recalled the experience. When she looked into Jin Wu's eyes, she hadn't seen a connection to another source of power. Instead, she had seen darkness, a vast, overwhelming force, something endless and all-consuming. Unlike other hunters, Jin Wu did not borrow his strength from anywhere. He was the source of his own power. No external forces granted him abilities, no limitations restricted his growth. He was the darkness itself. The weight of her words settled over the room like a suffocating pressure. Director Brennan, now understanding the gravity of the situation, thanked Miss Selner for her time. The implications were far beyond what he had expected. Connor watched as Director Brennan abruptly began walking, clearly having a plan in mind. When he asked where he was headed, Brennan instructed Connor to follow him to basement level 24. Both men walked to the elevator and stepped inside. As the doors closed and the descent began, Director Brennan finally broke the silence. If they couldn't use Miss Selner's abilities to bring Jin Wu into the Bureau, they would need to find another way. But what sinister plans were they hatching in the depths of their facility? Director Brennan wasn't willing to give up so easily. He reminded Connor of the first ever S-rank gate that had opened, a moment in history that no one could forget. Connor immediately understood what he was referring to. That catastrophic dungeon break had unleashed destruction on a scale never seen before, wiping out the entire West Coast. In response to the disaster, America had launched an unprecedented operation, offering massive rewards to gather the world's strongest hunters. Out of all those who had participated in the legendary raid, only 5 5 had survived. These 5 warriors, forged in the flames of battle, had been granted a title that carried the weight of an entire nation, national-level hunters. The monster responsible for the carnage was Kamish, the dragon known as the Undying Flame, a beast so powerful that it had single-handedly slaughtered hundreds of top-ranking hunters. Its name was etched into history as a symbol of absolute terror. As they reached basement level 24, Director Brennan questioned whether Connor could truly believe that nothing had been gained from such a tragedy. Connor hesitated for a moment before realizing what the director was implying. Brennan silently confirmed his suspicion as they stepped into the last room on the level. The reinforced door slid open, revealing a chamber unlike any other in the facility. Brennan stepped forward and carefully opened a safe embedded into the wall, unveiling the heavily secured artifact. It was a runestone extracted from Kamish's remains. Brennan explained that it had been 8 years since this rune had been recovered from the remains of the most fearsome monster in human history, and yet, in all that time, not a single hunter had been able to activate it. The power of the rune remained untouched, waiting in the shadows as if it had been left behind for someone else, for the one hunter who might finally unlock its secrets. As Brennan stared at Kamish's mortal remains, his mind raced with possibilities, wondering if this powerful artifact could be the key to their dilemma with Jin Wu. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Jin Wu stood in front of his bathroom mirror, lost in thought. Hae-In's words from earlier lingered in his mind. Jin Wu wondered if he had really changed that much, considering himself fairly slim with average looks. Curious about how others might see him, he glanced into the living room where Jinna was lying on the couch. Grinning to himself, he decided to ask for her opinion. But Jinna, unimpressed, shot him down instantly. She questioned where he had gotten such baseless confidence and playfully teased him, insisting that in her eyes he still looked like a bum. Jin Wu smirked before pinching her cheek, which quickly escalated into their usual playful banter. Their conversation soon shifted when Jin Wu mentioned his plans to form a new guild. Jinna, now genuinely intrigued, asked if he had settled on a name. He suggested Solo Play Guild. Jinna, however, immediately rejected it. She pointed out the obvious contradiction. Jin Wu wasn't a true solo player. His strength came from his ability to summon an army of shadow soldiers, so the name didn't make any sense. After thinking for a moment, Jinna offered an alternative, Ajin Guild. She explained the meaning behind it, where A meant I and Jin meant to go forward. Jin Wu found it surprisingly clever, but what amused him the most was when Jinna revealed the real reason behind her choice. It was simply her name spelled backward. After mulling it over, Jin Wu admitted it wasn't a bad name for his new guild. That night, Cha Hae-In lay on her bed, feeling overwhelmed with embarrassment. The memory of her earlier conversation with Jin Wu kept replaying in her mind. She had practically confessed her feelings. The realization made her cringe. She buried her face deeper into the blanket, wondering if Jin Wu now thought of her as a strange woman. Every time she tried to brush it off, the moment resurfaced, making her mind go completely blank. She told herself it was natural to be interested in him. After all, he had saved her life. But deep down, she knew her feelings were far more complicated. For a brief moment, her thoughts drifted to Min Byung-gu, the healer whose abilities had actually saved her. But just as she recalled him, a faint voice rang in her head. The voice was familiar, yet distant. She closed her eyes, desperately trying to grasp the fleeting memory. Something about it felt urgent, as if it had been buried in her subconscious, waiting for the right moment to surface. The voice echoed again. It spoke about Jin Wu. Slowly, the memory began to take shape. The fog in her mind lifted, revealing Min Byung-gu's shadow. But something was different. His usual calm demeanor was tinged with an unusual worry. His eyes, filled with concern, were locked onto her as he spoke. He had told her to warn Jin Wu, to tell him to be careful of the power he possessed. A chill ran down Hae-In's spine. Her eyes snapped open as she sat up abruptly. At the Knights Guild, Yuna arrived with urgent news for Guildmaster Park Jong-soo. A new gate had appeared the previous day, and securing a raid permit was proving difficult due to its high rank. While it wasn't an S-rank gate, it was dangerously close, enough to cause concern. The problem was clear. The Knights Guild simply didn't have the manpower to form a proper assault squad for such a high-level raid, but as one of the 5 major guilds in the country, failing to take it on would damage their reputation. Yuna pointed out that if they passed on this gate, the Flame Guild would likely seize the opportunity. The idea of handing over a gate that had appeared so close to their own territory made Jong-soo fume with anger. While their A-rank hunters were strong, comparable to those in other major guilds, their biggest weakness remained remained unchanged. They had no S-rank hunters. That single fact alone prevented them from taking on the raid. As Jongsu and Yuna discussed their limited options, Jung Yarim, an A-rank healer, joined the conversation. She suggested forming an alliance with another guild, a logical choice under normal circumstances, but Jongsu was skeptical. However, Yarim had a different idea. Instead of a guild alliance, she proposed bringing in a single hunter. Jongsu initially dismissed the idea, questioning how a single hunter could make a difference in such a high-level raid. But before he could brush it off completely, something clicked. He suddenly realized who Yarim was referring to. He knew that if they could bring hunter Jin Wu into the raid, it wouldn't just increase their chances of safely clearing the gate, but also enhance their public image. With no time to waste, Jongsu immediately decided to meet Jin Wu in person to discuss this crucial matter. With the Knights Guild planning ahead for their crucial meeting, Jin Wu arrived at his office the next day, having made a decision about his new guild's name. He proposed Ajin Guild. Jinho was thrilled with the suggestion, feeling relieved that it wasn't something ridiculous like solo play guild. With the name settled, Jin Wu and Jinho knew they only needed one last founding member to complete the team. Jinho was taken by surprise when Jin Wu dismissed hunter Cha Hae-In as the potential candidate, even though she seemed perfect for their guild. Jin Wu explained that she wasn't the right fit. He was looking for someone with a hunter's license who had no interest in guild activities. As they were discussing, a knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Jin Wu briefly wondered if it might be Hae-In again, but when he opened the door, he was met with three unfamiliar faces: Park Jongsu, Yuna, and Jung Yarim from the Knights Guild. Jongsu introduced himself and immediately got to the point, showing Jin Wu a video of a massive gate that had appeared in Busan. While it hadn't been officially classified as S-rank, its sheer size made it the largest gate ever recorded in the city. The situation was urgent. Jongsu explained that the Knights Guild was struggling to obtain a raid permit because they had no S-rank hunters. That was the real reason for their visit. They had traveled all this way to ask Jin Wu to join their assault team. If he agreed, it would fulfill the requirements needed to secure the permit. To make the offer more appealing, Jongsu offered Jin Wu 20% of the profits, a generous share compared to the usual 10% most S-rank hunters received. Jin Wu, however, countered with a 50-50 split. He made it clear that he would only join them if they treated him as a guild rather than just an individual hunter. Jongsu, realizing that Jin Wu was far from a pushover, agreed to the terms, but with one condition: Jin Wu would have to defeat the dungeon boss. Without hesitation, Jin Wu accepted. Jongsu informed him that the raid needed to happen by the next day at the latest. Jin Wu had no objections and assured them he wouldn't be late. Just as the meeting was wrapping up, Jin Wu's phone vibrated. Stepping outside to take the call, he was greeted by a familiar voice, his mother. She had just bought a cell phone and called simply because she wanted to hear his voice. Jin Wu, happy to hear from her, suggested they have dinner together that night, as it had been a while since they had spent time together. She agreed, and Jin Wu looked forward to the evening. The next day at Gwangali Beach in Busan, the elite hunters of the Knights Guild had gathered at the designated meeting point. Guildmaster Park Jong-soo stood among them, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness as he anxiously awaited Jin Wu's arrival. The scheduled start time was fast approaching. Only 5 minutes remained before the raid was set to begin. At that exact moment, Jin Wu stepped out of his apartment building. He glanced up at the sky, sensing that it was time. Without wasting a second, he activated Shadow Exchange and disappeared. Back at Gwangali Beach, a large crowd had formed, their eyes locked on the enormous gate. Despite the gloomy clouds overhead, the sheer size of it was intimidating even up close. Jin Wu observed the scene carefully, noting the various raid teams assembled, and was quietly impressed by the number of A-rank hunters present. As he walked forward, he quickly found himself surrounded by the other hunters. They were eager to see him in action, especially after his legendary performance during the Jeju Island raid. The air buzzed with excitement and curiosity, but Jin Wu found the sudden attention somewhat uncomfortable. Noticing his unease, Jung Yarim stepped in to deflect some of the attention. Her intervention gave Jin Wu a much-needed moment of respite from the barrage of questions. Meanwhile, Jong-soo, thrilled to see Jin Wu arrive, greeted him with enthusiasm. Jong-soo quickly addressed the group, officially announcing that as Guildmaster, he would be leading the raid. The declaration was met with disappointment from several hunters, many of whom had hoped that Jin Wu would take command instead. Despite their reactions, Jong-soo remained firm, explaining that Jin Wu's role was to protect the backline and ensure the team's safety. With everything in place, Jong-soo signaled the start of the raid. The team moved forward, stepping toward the unknown dangers lurking beyond the gate, ready to face whatever awaited them inside. While things had settled at Gwangali Beach with Jin Wu's arrival, a storm was silently brewing elsewhere. Inside Jinnah's high school, 3 male students, grumbling about being sent on an errand, wandered through the halls following their art teacher's instructions. Their destination was the second art classroom, a room that had long been repurposed into a storage space. As they unlocked the door, a thick cloud of dust greeted them, filling the air with the stale scent of neglect. Casually discussing how many statues they needed to carry back, one of them suddenly froze. His eyes locked onto something unusual in the far corner of the room. The others followed his gaze. There, embedded in the wall, was a large blue gate. Curiosity got the better of them. One of the students stepped forward, reaching out to inspect the gate, completely convinced that nothing would happen. At that moment, a deep crack split through the gate's surface. Before he could react, a hand shot out. It clamped down on the boy's head with an iron grip. He struggled desperately, but the hand's strength was absolute. Soon, a sickening crack echoed through the room as blood splattered across the walls, his skull crushed instantly. The remaining 2 students, paralyzed in horror, barely had time to scream before the gate shattered like glass. From the fractured portal, beasts began pouring into the world. The first creatures to emerge were 2 massive orcs, their keen senses immediately detecting prey nearby. The entire building was teeming with prey. One of them, eager for the thrill of the hunt, decided the time had come. He ordered his companion to summon their brothers. Once their forces were assembled, they would wipe out every human in the building before fortifying their position. As the leader orc walked through the corridor, he spotted 2 students in the distance and without hesitation charged at them with his axe raised high. The students, caught in the monster's bloodthirsty gaze, stood paralyzed in terror. In the blink of an eye, a normal school day had turned into a massacre. As the nightmare unfolded, one student managed to fumble for their phone with shaking hands. They dialed the Hunters Association Emergency Center. An employee answered quickly. On the other end was a teenage girl, her voice trembling with fear. The receptionist tried to remain calm and professional, asking how she could assist. The girl, barely able to get her words out, whispered that she was at her school, hiding in a bathroom while terrifying beasts roamed outside. The receptionist's breath caught for a moment as she realized the gravity of the situation. As the girl struggled to form a sentence, overwhelmed by sheer terror, the receptionist urged her to stay calm and assured that hunters were already on their way. She gently asked the girl to describe the creatures. Through quiet sobs, the girl explained they had human-like bodies, ugly faces, and green skin. A shiver ran down the receptionist's spine. She knew what they were dealing with, an orc outbreak. But before she could warn the girl, it was too late. A deep, guttural growl rumbled through the speaker. Then came a single blood-curdling scream and the line went dead. The school had turned into a slaughterhouse. While some students had managed to flee, many weren't as lucky. Bloodied corpses littered the hallways, and those still alive were either running for their lives or cowering and hiding. Orcs with blood dripping from their axes stood over the lifeless bodies of their victims. Though some prey had managed to escape, their cruel, beastly eyes gleamed with satisfaction. There were still plenty more students trapped inside. On the top floor, a group of students huddled together, their bodies pressed against the walls as they listened to the horrors unfolding below. They had barricaded the classroom door with desks and chairs, but it was a feeble defense at best. The boys in the room clutched whatever they could find, chairs, mops, anything that could be used as a weapon. But their hands trembled, and their eyes betrayed the truth. They knew none of it would make a difference. Suddenly, the door exploded from its frame as the leader orc burst into the classroom. Panic surged through the students. One boy, desperate to escape, sprinted toward the back door, only to be struck down instantly by an orc waiting in the shadows. With both exits blocked, the remaining students were trapped like cornered prey. Pressed against the wall, they could only watch in horror as the orcs closed in. Amid the chaos, Jinnah huddled with her classmates in a corner, her heart pounding. Fear consumed her, but in that moment of terror, she clung to a single hope, her brother, Jin Wu. She called out to him in her mind, believing with all her heart that he would come for her. An orc scanned the group of terrified students and sensed something unusual, a surge of magic energy. It was coming from Jinnah. Her presence stood out, and the orc's bloodthirsty gaze locked onto her as he became fixated on killing her. As the orc took a step toward her, Jinnah's classmates stepped in the way. Summoning every ounce of courage she had, she tried to block the orc's path, but it was futile. His eyes remained locked on Jinnah as he raised his massive axe, ready to strike. Jinnah watched in horror as the weapon rose above her head. She couldn't move. Her body was frozen in fear. Desperately, she squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the inevitable. Just as the orc prepared to strike, something completely unexpected happened. All of a sudden, a high orc shadow soldier, clad in black armor, emerged, gripping the orc's wrist with an iron grip. The orc barely had time to react before the shadow soldier slammed its fist down on its head with overwhelming force. The impact was so brutal that the orc shot through the roof like a rocket. Soon, more high orc shadow soldiers materialized, their imposing figures rising from the darkness. Their eyes locked onto any remaining threats as they moved in unison, forming an impenetrable wall around Jinna. The battle had shifted. She was no longer in danger. Jin Wu's shadow soldiers had turned up at the school just in time, securing the area. Their master, on the other hand, had entered the dungeon alongside the Knights Guild raid party. Upon entering, they were met with a twin-headed ogre. The creature roared and swung its massive battle axe with all its might, aiming to crush anything in its path. Jongsu, the tank of the group, charged forward, raising his shield just in time to block the powerful blow. The sheer force of the attack sent shockwaves through the ground, but he held firm. As Jongsu held the line, he called out to Yuna, who dashed in with lightning speed. With precision and agility, she leapt onto the ogre and slashed at both of its eyes. The beast roared in agony, thrashing wildly as Yuna signaled the others to strike and inflict as much damage as possible. Seizing the opportunity, the Knights Guild hunters launched a coordinated counterattack. Their frontline fighters moved in sync, slashing deep into the ogre's thick hide, while the mages positioned behind them rained down scorching spells. The monstrous creature, now covered in wounds and burns, staggered backward before collapsing with a heavy thud. Jongsu called for a brief regroup, acknowledging the difficulty of the raid. Encountering a twin-headed ogre at the entrance of a dungeon was rare, an ominous sign. Jin Wu, surveying the scene, identified it as a gravekeeper. Jongsu explained that such creatures often signified an army of undead lurking deeper within. Trying to keep the tension in check, Yuna joked about not jinxing their situation, but before anyone could respond, they noticed something strange. The undead creatures within the dungeon weren't charging at them as expected. Instead, they were retreating, backing away as if something far more terrifying was chasing them. Jin Wu's instincts flared. A sudden jolt of adrenaline shot through him as his heart pounded. He picked up urgent signals from the high orc warriors he had stationed to protect Jinna. Something was wrong. Without hesitation, he turned to Jongsu, informing him that he had an urgent matter to attend to. Jongsu, startled by the sudden announcement, protested, concerned about the dangers they might face without his presence. But Jin Wu remained unfazed. With a cold, steady gaze, he assured them that he would summon someone just as reliable to take his place. Then, without delay, he called forth the most powerful soldier in his shadow army, Beru. He instructed him to protect the humans while dealing with any other creatures however he pleased. The sheer presence of Beru, radiating overwhelming mana, sent a wave of fear through the hunters. They instinctively backed away, uneasy at the thought of finishing the raid alongside such a monstrous being. Jin Wu calmly informed them that his summoned soldiers, including Beru, would assist them. He assured Jongsu that 20 of his shadows were more than enough to clear the dungeon. Yuna, still in shock, questioned Jin Wu's decision to leave after summoning such an overwhelming force. But one glance at Jin Wu's icy expression silenced her. He made it clear, if they didn't want his help, he could withdraw his summons, but whatever happened next would be on the Knights Guild, not him. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Jongsu quickly agreed. Jin Wu checked the cooldown timer for his shadow exchange skill, frustration washing over him as he realized there was still over an hour left before he could use it. He couldn't afford to wait. Determined, Jin Wu turned and sprinted toward the exit. But just as he prepared to cut through the undead blocking his path, something unexpected happened. The creatures, instead of attacking, dropped to their knees, bowing before him. Jin Wu's eyes narrowed. Perhaps they were reacting to his necromancer abilities, but now wasn't the time to dwell on it. Dismissing his dagger back into his inventory, he burst out of the dungeon's exit and summoned his winged dragon, Kaisel. As he emerged, the crowd outside the gate stood frozen, watching in awe. Ignoring their curious stares, Jin Wu climbed onto Kaisel's back, eyes burning with determination. With one command, he took off, soaring through the skies at breakneck speed, racing toward Jinna. Back at the high school, the leader orc's head was sliced in half, its massive body collapsing to the floor. The towering shadow soldier slammed the remaining 2 orcs into the ground with a lethal blow. The students, frozen in fear, could only watch in horror, unable to comprehend what had just happened. In an instant, all 3 orcs attacking the classroom had been eliminated. Now, the shadow soldiers stood silently, guarding Jinna. Confused Confused and still in shock, Jinna wondered if her brother had arrived, but as she looked around, the shadow soldiers refused to let her leave their side, pointing toward the lingering danger still present in the building. Suddenly, a thunderous boom echoed through the hall. The dungeon gate cracked open and a throne emerged. The final restriction had been lifted, unleashing the dungeon's master, Grar, the orc warlord and chief of the Red Blade tribe. Sitting atop his throne, he exuded a terrifying presence, ready to bring mayhem upon the school. His moment of stillness was broken by a panicked subordinate rushing to his side, breathlessly reporting that a group of high orcs was assisting the humans. Grar, unimpressed, asked how many there were. Upon learning there were only 3, he scoffed at the idea that his warriors couldn't handle them, calling it pathetic. He lifted his massive axe and commanded his subordinate to lead the way. Reaching the classroom, Grar wasted no time. With a powerful swing, his axe struck the towering shadow soldier, sending it flying. The other orcs erupted in cheers, chanting their leader's name. Despite their formidable strength, the shadow warriors were no match for the chief of the Red Blade tribe. Boasting about his countless victories, Grar pointed to the tattoos covering his body, each a symbol of an enemy he had slain. He taunted the shadow soldiers, demanding a better fight. When they managed to block his strikes, he acknowledged their resilience but remained dominant. With a swift motion, he cut through them, expecting them to fall for good. But to his shock, the shadows regenerated instantly. Grar frowned. Was this some kind of sorcery? No matter how many times he cut them down, they kept coming back. Frustration boiled inside him as he pondered a way to eliminate the shadow soldiers. A voice rang in his head, urging him to kill the humans. The constant nagging gave him a headache. He then suddenly realized, if these shadows were controlled by magic, eliminating their caster would put an end to them. His gaze scanned the room, and then he saw Jinna. She stood behind the towering shadows, trembling. Grar was certain she was the source. Without hesitation, he commanded his orcs to seize her, knowing the shadow warriors would be powerless while regenerating. One of his subordinates lunged toward Jinna. The shadow soldiers tried to intercept, but they were swarmed by the other orcs who relentlessly slashed and stabbed, keeping them at bay. As the battle raged on, Grar advanced on Jinna himself. He grabbed her by the mouth, lifting her effortlessly off the ground. A wicked grin spread across his face. He was about to squeeze the life out of her when a deafening roar echoed from the distance. Grar's instinct screamed at him. Something was coming fast. A surge of fear locked him in place as the thunderous sound of an approaching force grew louder. His grip loosened, and Jinna fell to the ground, gasping for air. Her friend rushed to her side, frantic with concern. But Grar wasn't paying attention anymore. His focus was locked on the overwhelming presence closing in. Every second it drew closer. Grar's jaw clenched, his eyes widening as he grasped the sheer magnitude of the power rushing toward them. Panic surged through him as he bellowed to his orc warriors, ordering them to brace for impact. But before they could react, an earth-shattering explosion tore through the building. The classroom wall was obliterated, sending dust and debris billowing through the air. Jinna coughed, struggling to catch her breath, her vision blurred by the chaos around her. But amid the destruction, a familiar presence emerged beside her. Without a word, Jin Wu gently patted her head, a silent reassurance that she was safe now. Grar swallowed hard as he faced this new and incredibly powerful adversary. The overwhelming presence of Jin Wu sent a chilling fear through him, a feeling he had never experienced before. Desperate to assert himself, Grar straightened and introduced himself as the chief of the Red Blade tribe. But before he could finish, Jin Wu's hand rose, filled with rage. Jin Wu pointed directly at Grar, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade as he commanded him to shut up and wait. The orc chief froze instantly, silenced by the overwhelming presence before him. Jinna, tears welling in her eyes, threw her arms around her brother the moment her coughing subsided. Jin Wu stroked her hair gently, asking if she was okay, apologizing for being late. He glanced around, ensuring the students were safe. They nodded in relief, confirming they were unharmed. His gaze then landed on Jinna's face, where a distinct handprint on her cheek and neck made his blood boil. Without hesitation, he commanded Igris to stay by her side and protect her, then summoned additional shadow soldiers to escort the remaining students to safety. As the orcs tried to budge, seeing their prey slipping away, Jin Wu glared at them with anger, demanding to know who had allowed them to move. Grar, realizing the situation was far beyond his understanding, questioned Jin Wu. Who was he, and how could he speak their language? But Jin Wu's expression remained unreadable, his silence more terrifying than any answer he could give. Seeing no response, Grar didn't waste another second. With a roar, he commanded his warriors to attack. The orcs surged forward, their weapons raised, but they never stood a chance. one swung a massive axe at Jin Wu, but before it could land, Jin Wu caught its fingers effortlessly, crushing them in his grip. The orc howled in pain before Jin Wu flipped it upside down, slammed it into the ground, and crushed it beneath his foot. Two more orcs lunged, but Jin Wu barely moved. With a flick of his wrist, he activated Commander's Touch, sending them colliding mid-air before clenching his fists, causing their bodies to burst apart. Despite the mounting losses, the orcs pressed forward, charging at him with reckless abandon, but Jin Wu weaved through them with ease, dismantling them with nothing but his fingers. Wherever he touched, heads, shoulders, arms, torsos, the orcs exploded on impact, their remains painting the walls in carnage. In mere moments, dozens of orcs lay motionless, and Jin Wu stood face to face with Grar. The orc chief barely had time to react before Jin Wu grabbed him by the jaw and slammed his head against the wall. Grar gasped for air, his vision spinning as he struggled to comprehend what had just happened. Jin Wu's gaze shifted, scanning the hallway. The sight of fallen students, lifeless bodies littered across the floor, sent his rage boiling over. His cold eyes locked onto Grar once more as he pressed for an answer for the slaughter of humans. Grar, trembling, stammered a response, claiming that a voice in his head had ordered him to slaughter all humans. Jin Wu leaned in, his gaze piercing as he pressed for more. Had the voice commanded him to kill him as well? Grar, now desperate, pleaded for forgiveness, swearing that he hadn't intended to challenge Jin Wu, but Jin Wu wasn't satisfied with his answer. The orc chief continued to beg, but Jin Wu only grew colder. Perhaps he thought Grar had considered him human after all. Jin Wu, in an eerily calm voice, told Grar that he might forgive him, but the path to forgiveness would not be easy. And in the next instant, without another word, Jin Wu summoned the demon monarch's dagger and brutally ended Grar's life. Meanwhile, at Guangali Beach, the dungeon raid pressed on. Jin Wu's shadow ants swarmed the cavern walls, their battle cries echoing through the space. The sight sent shivers down the spines of the Knights Guild hunters, some of whom began voicing concerns, fearing these creatures might turn on them at any moment. Yuna, uneasy, looked toward Jongsu for direction. Jongsu, deep in thought, realized they couldn't afford to back out now. If they retreated, they would have to face the reporters waiting outside, and calling off the raid out of fear wasn't an option. Just as he was steeling himself, Beru suddenly appeared in front of him. The unexpected appearance of the monstrous figure made Jongsu freeze, his confidence draining instantly. He struggled to find the right words, nervously attempting to address the creature with respect. Beru, however, simply stared at him in silence, heightening Jongsu's unease before vanishing just as quickly as he had appeared. The moment Jongsu began to process what had happened, Beru reappeared again, startling him further, and tossed something toward his feet. It was a severed head, the remains of a Death Knight, one of the strongest monsters they could encounter. Jongsu's breath hitched as he registered what he was looking at. The realization that Beru had effortlessly slain such a formidable foe in an instant left him in stunned silence. As Beru returned to commanding the Shadow Ants, Jongsu slumped to the ground, overwhelmed. His teammates rushed to check on him, asking if it was safe to continue following the shadow creatures. Gathering himself, Jongsu assured them he was fine and pointed at the decapitated head. He reminded them of the immense value of magic stones harvested from high-ranking monsters like this. Then, turning to his party, he asked if they still wanted to proceed. Before he could even finish his sentence, the raid party had already started moving. Yuna chuckled, calling out to Jongsu to hurry up and keep pace. It had been quite a while since the raid began, and at last, the Knights Guild strike squad reached the entrance of the boss's lair. As they stepped inside, a chilling sight awaited them. An archlich, the dungeon's boss, flanked by a group of Death Knights. The moment they laid eyes on it, fear paralyzed them. None of them had expected to face a creature this powerful and infamous. Jongsu quickly assessed the situation. Archliches were notorious for wiping out entire guilds. He recalled the devastating incident involving China's Gold Dragon Guild, an elite force that was annihilated by an archlich, resulting in a near-catastrophic dungeon break that was only contained thanks to Liu Zhigang's intervention. His gut told him they were in trouble. Their squad, composed of only A-rank hunters, stood little chance against such a formidable opponent. Sensing the danger, Yuna turned to Jongsu anxiously, asking what they should do. But before he could respond, the hunters noticed noticed a horde of Death Knights marching toward them, weapons raised and ready to attack. Jong-soo snapped into action, urgently ordering his team to block the doors. Yim, reacting instantly, activated her holy shield, erecting a barrier that sealed the entrance in an instant. Jong-soo knew they were running out of options, and without Jin Wu, survival seemed impossible. Yim, already struggling to maintain the barrier, turned to Jong-soo with a look of concern. She warned him that it wouldn't hold for even 5 minutes. Then, at that critical moment, Beru stepped forward without hesitation. He strode past the hunters and stood directly in front of the Archlich. The boss, upon recognizing the Shadow Army's presence, was momentarily taken aback. It demanded to know why the Monarch's personal army was attacking them. Beru remained unfazed, baring his mandibles and extending his claws. He coldly declared that they had been chosen by the king, while the Archlich had not. Indignant and in disbelief, the Archlich insisted that it would speak to the king itself. But before it could finish its sentence, Beru materialized mere inches from its face. The Archlich barely had a moment to react before Beru's claw pierced through its chest. A stunned silence filled the room as the Lich looked down, eyes wide in horror. Beru gripped its heart and yanked it free. The boss trembled, shaking its head in denial, desperately pleading for Beru not to break it. But the Ant King didn't care for its screams. Without hesitation, he crushed the life source in his fist. In an instant, the Archlich and its Death Knights disintegrated into the air, leaving nothing but a fading echo of their existence. Beru roared triumphantly as he struck down the final boss of the dungeon. The Knights Guild members stood in a mix of disbelief and excitement, watching as the raid concluded without a single casualty on their side. But things weren't as calm at Jinnah's high school, where a large crowd had gathered. Shaken by the tragic incident, the atmosphere was heavy with panic, grief, and the cries of parents mourning the loss of their children in the dungeon outbreak. Meanwhile, Jin Wu had already left the scene, seated in a car alongside President Go Gun-hee. As they rode together, President Go provided a report on the situation. Out of all the students, 23 had managed to escape safely, while 10 others were rescued from the building. The rest, tragically, hadn't made it in time. He then shared additional data with Jin Wu, revealing an alarming trend. Gate appearances had been steadily increasing worldwide over the last 6 months. Alongside this surge, there was also a noticeable rise in the number of people awakening as hunters. It was as if the world was trying to maintain a balance between the threats emerging from the gates and those who could stop them. Jin Wu then asked about the reason behind the chairman's sudden visit. President Go explained that several countries had expressed interest in meeting him due to his S-rank status. Many nations were eager to recruit him for their own purposes, with some even making highly lucrative offers. He assured Jin Wu that the association had protected his personal information thus far, but ultimately, the decision to engage with these nations rested with him. As Jin Wu listened closely, President Go voiced his concern. If he were to leave Korea, the country might struggle to adapt to the changes looming on the horizon. Soon, the chairman's car arrived at the hospital where Jinnah had been taken. As Jin Wu stepped out, President Go made one final plea, urging him to stay in the country. He reassured Jin Wu that the association would do everything in its power to support him. But the troubled look in Jin Wu's eyes suggested that darker forces were already in motion, forces that would test not just his loyalty, but the very limits of his extraordinary power. The Korean Hunter Association promised to provide Jin Wu with any resources he needed. They had already lost 3 of their S-rank hunters, 2 in the Jeju raid and 1 to the United States. Losing someone of Jin Wu's caliber would be devastating, and President Go was determined to prevent that at all costs. After a brief moment of thought, Jin Wu made an unexpected request: permission to enter high-ranking gates alone. President Go was taken aback. The law requiring a set number of hunters in raids was designed to protect them from unnecessary risks. However, as he considered Jin Wu's words, it became clear that this might have been the very reason he had formed his own guild. Jin Wu confirmed this and asked if his request was too much. While the idea of a single-man raid team was unheard of, President Go understood that Jin Wu wasn't just any hunter. Though hesitant, he agreed that it wasn't impossible and promised to do everything in his power to make it happen. After dropping Jin Wu at the hospital, President Go headed straight to the National Assembly to discuss discuss Jin Wu's urgent matter. As he presented his request to recognize summon minions as official members of strike squads, one of the assembly members immediately rejected the idea, calling it absurd. The member argued that the Hunters Association was meant to serve all hunters equally and accused President Go of bending regulations solely for hunter Jin Wu. Remaining calm, President Go acknowledged that this was indeed preferential treatment. He then posed a simple yet powerful question to the assembly. If they had to choose between sending an assault squad of regular hunters or letting Jin Wu clear a dungeon alone, which would they pick? The room fell silent as the weight of the question sank in. President Go reminded them that guilds from around the world were eager to recruit Jin Wu. If Korea refused to compromise, there was a real risk he might leave for another country. He urged them not to repeat past mistakes, referencing how Hunter Hang Dong-gu had defected to the United States. He then nudged the assembly, reminding them that if another S-rank gate appeared in Korea, they would need someone capable of protecting them. Meanwhile, unaware of all the buzz surrounding her, Yuan was fully engrossed in her work in the entertainment industry. After wrapping up a shoot, she noticed her phone buzzing with a call from her brother Jin Ho. He invited her to join Ajin Guild, assuring her she wouldn't have to do any actual work. He explained that they needed one more founding member to finalize the guild's registration. Skeptical, Suan teased Jin Ho, asking if he had fallen for some kind of scam. Jin Ho, amused, told her she'd be shocked when she found out who this so-called shady guy was. After their call, Suan made her way to Ajin Guild's office. Upon arriving, Jin Ho introduced her to Jin Wu, explaining that she was his cousin and a certified A-rank hunter. The realization hit Suan. She was standing before the famous S-rank Jin Wu. Jin Ho, ever playful, reminded her that she was the real celebrity in the family, but Suan remained more excited to meet Jin Wu than to bask in her own fame. Observing their interaction, Jin Wu considered the family dynamics. Jin Ho was a D-rank hunter, while Suan was A-rank. He pondered whether genetics played a role in the awakening process, recalling cases of siblings gaining abilities and reflecting on his own father who had been a hunter. Turning his attention back to Suan, Jin Wu asked if Jin Ho had explained everything to her. She confirmed that she understood they needed a founding member. Jin Wu then warned her that joining their guild would likely cause a media frenzy and asked if she was prepared for that. Unbothered, Suan brushed it off, saying that anything was better than being involved with Jin Sung. Curious, Jin Wu asked who she was referring to, and Jin Ho quietly explained that Jin Sung was his older brother, infamous for his bad personality. As Jin Wu processed the conversation, Suan hesitated for a moment before stepping closer to him. With a small smile, she asked if he would mind taking a selfie with her. Jin Wu obliged, and Suan quickly posted it on social media. The post went viral almost instantly, sparking conversations everywhere. When Cha Hae-In saw the photo, an uneasy feeling washed over her. Her heart ached, her body trembled, and for the first time, she felt a deep sense of insecurity she couldn't ignore. After the National Assembly approved Jin Wu's request to recognize his summoned minions as official members of strike squads, he arrived with Jin Ho at the site of an A-rank gate that had recently appeared. It was their guild's first ever raid. After receiving authorization, Jin Ho stood in awe, staring at the massive towering structure before him. Jin Wu, always focused, led the way as they prepared for their mission. However, they weren't alone. The chief inspector of the Hunter Association's surveillance team, Wu Ginel, was also present, assessing Jin Wu's shadow soldiers. Observing them closely, he noted that each of them was at least B rank, with some likely reaching A rank. Jin Wu and his soldiers easily passed the safety checks required for the A rank gate, proving they were more than capable. Ginel quickly realized that those questioning whether Jin Wu received special treatment simply didn't understand the full extent of his power. With preparations complete, Ginel signaled that they were ready to proceed. However, before stepping into the gate, he unexpectedly removed his coat. Both Jin Wu and Jin Ho were taken aback as Ginel revealed a full suit of armor underneath his formal attire. He then explained that Chairman Go had ordered him to personally observe the raid to ensure everything was truly safe. He asked if he could accompany them as a representative of the inspection team, just for the day. Jin Wu questioned whether Chief Ginel was truly prepared for what lay ahead. At that moment, Ginel didn't fully grasp what Jin Wu meant, but he soon realized it after witnessing the gruesome scene unfolding before him in the dungeon. An A-rank monster, a Naga, was being ruthlessly stabbed and slashed by Jin Wu's shadow soldiers. On the other side of the battlefield, the shadow ants devoured their prey alive, creating a disturbing sight. Iron and Tank tore through the monsters with sheer brute force, while the formidable Beru decapitated a Naga with a single effortless slice. Sweat dripped down Ginel's forehead as he observed the massacre. Even elite veteran hunters with exceptional combat and magic skills would struggle against such formidable opponents, yet these monsters stood no chance against Jin Wu's shadow army. Among them, one figure stood out the most, Igris. Wielding the demon monarch's sword, he moved with blinding speed, lightning striking from his blade with every swing. He annihilated the Nagas in an instant, his overwhelming presence making Ginel wonder if he surpassed even A-rank hunters. For a brief moment, Ginel questioned whether he himself would stand a chance in a one-on-one fight against Igris. While his army handled the monsters, Jin Wu commanded another squad to mine the mana crystals, ensuring every resource was efficiently utilized. Ginel, still in shock, now fully understood why Chairman Go had sent him to observe Jin Wu firsthand. This wasn't just a one-man assault squad. Jin Wu was capable of clearing an A-rank dungeon, retrieving valuable corpses and mining mana crystals entirely on his own. Just then, the boss of the dungeon appeared, a massive Naga wielding dual tridents. Its presence alone sent a wave of unease through Ginel. Jin Wu, however, remained calm. He instructed his mining team to keep working while commanding the rest of his soldiers to return to him. Ginel was puzzled. Why send away the shadow soldiers when they could easily handle the boss? Jin Wu simply smirked. Taking out his demon monarch's dagger, he explained that relying too much on his shadows could dull his own abilities. Then, without hesitation, he lunged forward. The Naga boss roared, swinging its trident with immense force, but Jin Wu had already moved. In a flash, he closed the distance, dodging effortlessly. Before the creature could react, Jin Wu sliced through its head in one swift, precise strike. Ginel watched in awe as the beast's lifeless body crumpled to the ground with a heavy thud. A notification appeared before Jin Wu. He had reached level 101. Even more surprising, all his job-exclusive skills had leveled up. His shadow exchange cooldown had decreased by an hour. Jin Wu's eyes widened with delight as he realized that if it continued to decrease with each level he gained, he would eventually be able to move freely anywhere without worrying about his mother and sister's safety. Meanwhile, Ginel stood frozen, still trying to process what he had just witnessed. Jin Wu had sliced through the thick Naga scales with nothing but 2 daggers, something that should have been impossible. Just then, something else caught Ginel's attention. Jin Wu raised his hand over the fallen Naga boss and murmured a single word, "Arise." The system notified him that the shadow enhancement was successful. His new soldier started at level 13. Despite being smaller, it radiated an enormous amount of mana. Jin Wu concluded that, like Tusk, it might be able to increase its size through magic. The system then prompted Jin Wu to choose a name for his new summon. After a brief moment of thought, he decided on Jima. Jin Ho, who had been watching closely in awe, was amazed at Jin Wu's ability to turn such a powerful monster into one of his own. Despite his excitement, he reminded Jin Wu that they should head out. However, Jin Wu's gaze remained locked on the massive carcass before him, contemplating what to do with it. Outside the gate, reporters stood in wait, ready to capture anything noteworthy. Then, from within the gate, an enormous figure emerged, carrying the Naga boss's carcass on its shoulders. It was Tusk. Gasps filled the air. Cameras flashed wildly. Panic briefly set in among the reporters, but once they realized it was Jin Wu's summon, fear turned into excitement. Tusk, feeling self-conscious under the spotlight, responded with a big, awkward smile. Jin Ho and Jin Wu stood silently, realizing that their first raid had attracted far more attention than they had expected. Meanwhile, Chief Wu Ginel, standing beside them, remained shaken. The scenes he had witnessed inside the dungeon refused to leave his mind. With the same exhausted and shaken expression, Chief Wu Ginel arrived at the Hunter Association, recounting the entire ordeal to President Go Gun-hee. Ginel, his eyes dark with unease and sweat trickling down his brow, admitted that what he had witnessed wasn't a typical raid, it was a massacre. As he detailed every moment inside the dungeon, President Go let out a deep sigh, understanding the toll this experience had taken on him. The chairman calmly instructed Ginel to take some rest. Left alone in his office, President Go stood by the window, lost in deep thought. Hunter S. Jin Wu had not only cleared an A-rank dungeon, but had also retrieved monster corpses and mined mana crystals completely on his own. He recognized Jin Wu as a one-man guild, an army unto himself. A slow smile spread across President Go's face. His earlier instincts had been correct. Korea and the world were on the brink of a massive shift in power, and the first tremor of that that shift was already underway. In Tokyo, the bustling city suddenly came to a standstill. Pedestrians froze, conversation stopped. All eyes turned to the sky, where an enormous shadow loomed overhead. A gigantic portal, the size of a skyscraper, had opened in the heart of Shinjuku. An S-rank gate had just appeared.